Internet, happy Friday, and welcome to another episode of Enter the Popverse. I am Ashley Victoria Robinson, your video producer and host here in the Popverse. If you didn't know, the Popverse is, of course, a virtual realm created by ReadPop, where we are celebrating the best in TV, movies, and comics each and every single day. Enter the Popverse is our weekly roundup chat show where we talk all the best and only the best stories from the past week. If you want more details, if you want more on these specific topics and so much more, always, I encourage people to visit thepopverse.com where you can get this story and go even deeper. While you're over there, why not get yourself a Popverse membership? It's pretty cool, pretty dope. If you're going to do something like try to watch the streaming panels from New York Comic Con, the Popverse membership is the place for you, my friends. And if you enjoy watching this show, I think you're really going to enjoy that membership because it's going to allow you access to some of the incredible things that me and everyone on Team Popverse is doing all over on so many incredible stages across the convention next weekend. As a reminder, if you are going to go to New York or you're thinking about coming, there are just a few little tickets left, so don't live that FOMO life. Grab your tickets, come and see us, come and see some of the incredible things that we are getting up to. Like I, for example, your lovely hostess, am going to be hostessing the Ewan McGregor main stage panel. I know you're going to want to see it. I want you to see it. If you cannot be there in person with one of these, you can be there virtually by getting one of these. So why not come join me, huh? All right, friends. Now that all that's over, I know you're making your plans. I know you're coming to New York Comic Con because I'm coming to New York Comic Con. But someone else important is also coming to New York Comic Con, and that is this show's unofficial co-host. So please join me in the proud Enter the Popverse tradition of putting your hands together in the Theater Kid round of applause to welcome Mr. Graham McMillan to the Popverse. Welcome back, Graham. It's been a week since I've seen you.
A full week. Definitely a week. 100% a week. Yes.
You want to know what's even better? My hair is going to change from segment to segment for the next few weeks.
I love that very much. I love that people are going to be like, wait, what? And you're like, I'm just a very quick change artist.
Look, it's Canadian Thanksgiving. Magic can happen. Ooh.
Is that what Canadian Thanksgiving is? It's magic?
It's literally the same myth as American Thanksgiving. We just do it in October to be petty and do it before the Americans. That is 100% truth.
I love that very much. One of my favorite... Sorry, how do you go?
Sorry, turkey is just like dry, less good chicken and like, not for nothing, but like the Thanksgiving food and the Christmas food are too similar to do 3 weeks apart. So I am very team Thanksgiving is in October.
I love turkey. It's just dry, less good chicken.
It is.
Am I
wrong?
I'm not going to say one way or the other. Thanks very much. I, of course, not being American, like came to Thanksgiving late. I was going to say late in life, but it's like 20 years ago now, so not that late in life. But I do remember my first few Thanksgivings. I was just like, I don't get it. We just do this. This is it. There's nothing more. So yeah, sure, have Thanksgiving wherever you want. That's fine.
Yeah, so we can do the Thanksgiving, how do we celebrate colonialism discussion for American Thanksgiving, because you know what I'm thankful for, Graham?
Oh, I love this already. On you go. What are you thankful for?
I'm thankful to be in a guild that has taken video games away. It's fine. This actually doesn't affect me personally at all, and I think this is a great move on behalf of SAG.
Okay.
But we thought we should probably break this down.
I have a question about this.
Yes.
The vote for the video game strike
was
overwhelmingly in favor. Like, not just like, it wasn't vaguely close.
Yeah. A cute 98.32%. Yes.
I mean, that's amazing. So
that's
as someone
than our general strike authorization. Sorry, Graham.
As someone who is not in SAG.
Yes.
I do actually need you to break this down for me because I'm really curious. Why now? Is this related to the movie strike, the movie TV strike? Is
yes
this
and no.
Literally just timing? Like what's going on with this?
So it is definitely like the timing of it all. Like it's this is the moment. That's very much what's going on right now. If you cast your mind all the way back to when The Last of Us was just a video game franchise and it was very popular and everybody loved it. Elliot Page very publicly came out and talked a lot about like how well it was selling, how much money was made off of it, what a powerful franchise it was, and there was no residuals. And Elliot Page does the voice of one of the lead characters in the games, and I believe also did some body capture, and their likeness is also used in it. Peter Dinklage of Game of Thrones fame has also very publicly come out and been like, I've been in a ton of video games that are like super, super popular, and there is no threshold for residuals. This money just goes back to the gaming companies, but ultimately it's the same problem with the AMPTP. It funnels all the way up to the top, because we've also heard developers, VFX, and designers talk about crunch, right? Like video games as an industry needs to take a good long look at itself and its workflow.
I mean, yes, as does everything in the entertainment industry. Let's be
comics. But like video games very much shown, and I think it's because it's quite a new industry compared to film, television, publishing. So we're loving our strike lives. We have come out here in support of our WGA brethren. There's a ton of crossover with SAG and WGA in terms of family and like people who are just in both guilds. We supported them. We struck ourselves, which, like by week 2 of the WGA strike felt like an inevitability. And it's important to note that the president of SAG, current president of SAG, is Fran Drescher. That's why you've seen all the nanny jokes. The vice president of SAG is Anthony Rapp, who you may know from Rent or Star Trek Discovery. They ran on their platform of streaming residuals. That was the hill that they died on. That's the reason why I voted for them. Definitely not because Anthony Rapp was a seminal crush for me as a child. Definitely not because when I met him, he was a lovely human person and it was a perfect interaction, so I could never meet him again. It was all on the power of the streaming services. So as soon as the WGA went, it felt like for us, it was an inevitability. And video games has been something that has been protected since SAG initially went on strike in July, right before San Diego Comic-Con. Animation and anything voiceover and commercials and industrials, but I won't explain what those are, were specifically protected by SAG. Now there is a lot of VO gigs that are SAG. I can't say any of them because it's all struck work, but there's a lot of very popular.
Use some Google out there, people.
Yeah. And that's the reason why you maybe have seen people not speaking about them, despite the fact that they can technically still work on those projects. They still can't promote it. That social media thing is really hinky for a lot of people. But video games was a refuge for a lot of people who were still looking to work pretty consistently. And then we got sent an email. A lot of things with SAG feel like they come out of the blue when you're just a member. Like, I don't know what the committees look like. These emails just come to you. You do what they tell you to do. We're in the middle of another election right now. There's all this voting to be done with SAG this year. And it said, do you want to vote to approve authorization for the video game strike? And I think for a lot of folks, myself included, it was like, I'm already not working. Might as well.
Why not?
Double strike, strike while the iron's hot. And now that we're post the WGA resolution, they got pretty much everything they want.
Yeah, I do think the WGA resolution was a big deal because they literally demonstrated that it works, right?
Yeah.
You hold strong, you hold fast, and eventually the studios will say, okay, we actually do need you.
Yeah. And with SAG, I've mentioned this a couple times on different episodes. There is a little bit of a way to get around it. You can hire either AFTRA, who are Canadian actors. You can hire Equity, who are UK. I keep saying English, but I believe they cover the whole UK stage actors. Like, there are ways that you can skirt productions, but ultimately, if it's going to be distributed under a SAG contract, which things like the Police Box show are, now that has an American accompaniment to it, becomes a little more complicated. So that's why you're seeing things be pushed or things be paused. And video games is a huge industry. It's one of the only entertainment industries that consistently makes money. So what's perplexing about this is we might resolve the AMPTP strike and this will still be going on for SAG. And it makes me wonder, because a lot of WGA writers also write on video games, if there's going to be maybe some other entertainment guilds lining up. And we already know that when a video game is announced to come out, it means basically nothing. It's going to be pushed back, 50,000 more times. So
you just touched on something that I was curious about, which is, well, I think after the WGA basically got what they wanted, like you said, I think it seems much clearer that SAG will as well. Do you know what I mean? Like it almost feels like an inevitability now.
I hope so. At the time of this recording, we are entering back into negotiations. TBD on when folks see this. If that, I don't think it will have been resolved in the short amount of days, but it could have been.
You say that from the time from restarting negotiations to a deal for the WGA was incredibly short, all told.
So what I think the sticking point is going to be is actually what I think the sticking point is going to be on video games. It's the likeness rights and the likeness reusability rights and the AI, because companies have already done this against people's wills and have been caught and called out. And if they do that, if they do the body scans and everything, then they eliminate things like, and I think we've talked about this previously, central casting and extra work and background work and stand-in work, which is a way that a lot of people get into the industry to begin with. It's a way that a lot of people get their SAG cards, particularly after they changed the rules on the web series requirements, which is how I got in. And I think because this can affect two industries, I think that's going to be the sticking point. And I think kind of like minimum staffing was the sticking point for WGA, I think this could be something that I could see us going into another couple rounds of negotiations. So maybe the strike is over by the end of the year. But look, prove me wrong, AMPTP.
You're like, I'm willing to be wrong in this.
I would love it if by the time this episode comes out, this is all resolved. But I think the video games being added onto the AMPTP strike, I think is going to hurt people in the long run. And I think next year, and by people, I mean large corporate entities that have the rights of human people, I think next year we're really going to see our video game content dropping as a result of this.
I'm really curious as to whether you think, as someone who's literally part of this, whether the video game strike is going to slow down the resolution of the movie stuff, or are they two separate? You don't think are they two separate entities in your mind?
I think they are separate enough because there's a lot of limited crossover. So there's not a lot of movie studios that make video games. I know everybody is screaming at their phones and computers right now about the Sony Spider-Man games. But if you look at what are consistently like, Zelda has nothing to do with this. You can make a Zelda movie without another Zelda video game coming out. Animal Crossing, GTA, like all of those sort of top tier video games have very little to do with the big five studios. So I could see that resolving and this going on for another 6 months. Do I think the picketing and the looks and the tweets will be as exciting? I don't, but I could, because this is just it's a much smaller group of people, and it's a lot less, not for nothing, it's a lot less famous people. It's a lot less celebs.
So my first thought when I heard about the video game strike, besides like, oh, that's exciting, which is, I think that's where a lot of people went, honestly, which is like, oh yeah, good for you, make that happen, was that it might be something where, like you said, the AI thing could actually complicate matters, right? Yeah. There might be enough crossover that people are like, well, if you give it to them in the movie thing, do you then have to give it to them? And
Yes, and I've highlighted a section here that folks can read. I'm pointing as if you can see the screen the monitor that I have it on, or should be.
Oh, you're pointing in the right direction. You are doing the right
good. It's over here.
You're professional.
This quote from the negotiating committee specifically does point out AI as being what is seen to be a sticking point for video games. So I'm going to leave this up for a couple minutes so folks have a chance to read it as we wrap up this discussion. But boy, did I ever not think I would at one point in my life be actively involved in 3 different strikes.
It is a marvelous time to be alive. And I'm so excited that WGA did get almost everything they were looking for. And I very much hope that it does lay the groundwork for the AMPTP to, for all intents and purposes, do the same for SAG-AFTRA.
Grim, do you think that there's any chance that for the consumer, for the person at home who is watching this, who's reading Pop First, who doesn't work in entertainment, do you think there's any chance that adding video games, does this, not to say that does this matter to them, that's not right, but like, does this strike a chord, or do you think this is something that people are like, okay, I thought maybe this was already covered?
I'm not sure if people thought it was already covered, but I think that it's not going to change any minds insofar as I think if anyone was complaining about the strike for movies, they're not going to be like, well, if it's video games as well, they must have a point. I do think that a lot of people are going to have the same reaction I did insofar as I'm glad you're also striking for video games because, as you said, video games is a very big business and is like arguably far more unfair in terms of residuals and in terms of distribution of payment.
Yeah, an average recording session rate starts at 8 hours for $800 versus like what you would get on maybe a film or a television set.
Yeah, so it's I would love to see these things becoming more fair. I think you're also right in so far as I think when the resolution does come for this, I think it's going to make significant changes in the video game industry. I think that it's going to drastically change things.
Well, I look forward to breaking it down with you, hopefully before the end of the year. Graham, one last time, where can people follow you on social media?
I'm on the internet. You know my name is literally right down there. Just use the first name and then add an M to it and look for me on Twitter, which you and I both agree is Twitter, not X, and Blue Sky.
All right, Graham, thank you, and I will see you soon.
Bye.
Graham, you're just the best. I cannot wait to see you in less than a week and be full of coffee and donuts as we try to hold ourselves together starting next week in New York City. Okay, not only do we have Graham with us today, we have some really, really incredible creators across mediums who are entering the Kickstarter space for the first time, one of whom is making his very first foray into comics. At the time that you are checking this out, you can actually visit Kickstarter right now and check out the project we're going to be talking about. This is Evermind. I am going to break it down for you with two of the creators behind it. We're going to break down the magic, what the goals are, how the story evolves. I got to read some of these issues that some of these incredible creators put their heart and soul behind, and I am so excited to bring the story of Evermind to you right now. So please join me in putting your hands together in the traditional Enter the Popverse Theater Kid round of applause in welcoming Daniel Wu, actor, director, producer, racing driver, swordsmith, and comic book artist Sean Chen, whose work you know from Marvel and DC, Iron Man, Wolverine, X-Men, Nova, Batman Beyond, and then of course, Evermind, as they break down for us why this project is so incredible. Hi, Daniel. Hi, Sean. How are you doing today?
Hey, Ashley. Doing good.
Yeah, doing great. Thanks for having us.
I am so excited to talk to you guys about Evermind. I was so lucky to get preview issues and read a couple of them before we started today. But I would love to know, before we get into the nitty gritty, what is your origin story? How did this creative team come together?
Okay, well, I've been working for Marvel and DC for maybe like a couple of decades. So I wanted to kind of graduate from that and strike out and do a project that I have more control over. So meaning that I write it and ink it myself. So I met Carl Choi, our publisher, and he asked me about an image he saw on my Instagram, like it was just like an illustration that I did of a robot and a robot gorilla and a robot girl, and he asked me if there was more story to it. I said that there really wasn't. It was just an illustration. But then he kind of said, like, well, if you did have to come up with a story about it, what would it be? And it was all like a very hypothetical thing, just kind of like playing pretend. And then at some point after we kind of like developed a story for a long time, he told me it's time to start executing on it. It was kind of a surprise because he kind of like in a very sneaky way got me all the way to the point where we're ready to start. And that's kind of the way that I have to work, because I don't consider myself a writer. I was mostly like an artist for so long, and would be very hesitant to actually throw my hat in the ring as a writer. But we got it to the point where he kind of made it an easy kind of slide into the writing part of it. And we started it, and we got it going pretty far. And I asked him, like, who do you see as a person that plays the main character? And he said, "Draw this guy." And he just gave me a picture of Daniel Wu.
Yeah.
So I was like, sure. I say, I'm gonna have to make him look older, because this guy is this character is probably an older guy. So but then we started drawing him, and then at some point Carl came up with the idea of actually involving Daniel himself, because I think he actually knew him. So that's where Daniel came on board. So you can take it from there.
Yeah. I am old though, so it turned out to be okay. Carl, I've known for, 15, 20 years now, through various different parts of the entertainment business that he's been involved in. And we've also shared, I've known that he's been a big comic book fan for a long time, probably more intense than me, but we shared a love for a specific Hong Kong comic called Oriental Heroes and Dragon Gate, Dragon Tiger Gate, and those ones. But we never really put two and two together to put it to a project. And we've talked about all these things for many years of our likes and dislikes and blah blah blah. And then when he got into this 24/7 comic space, it started to intensify a lot more. And he had already been working with Sean. And I think Carl, the great thing about Carl, he knows a lot of people, he knows a lot of people's talents, and he knows how to put people together, right? And so he realized like this might be a good pairing, because I was at the time talking about how it's such a hard to find original IP in LA or in the States, because I'm looking for stuff to produce for myself and all that kind of stuff. And so when he started doing 24/7 comics and working with Sean, he realized like this might be a good pairing. And actually, because of my interest in, I do love comic books, but I never thought of myself being in the comic world. But the idea of creating your own IP and working with really talented people to do that, this actually was a great way to do it, because unlike film, we can do it in a relatively smaller format with less people involved and be more controlling of the content. But also it costs a lot less than to try and start a show or a movie or something like that. And it's actually a really good starter because you can make the comic book, we can release it and see if there's an audience for it. And if there is, then it can roll over into a bunch of other things. But at least we've got this kind of really great creative team going, and it ended up being a really cool pairing because, Sean is the first time writing his own comic book. I'm first time getting involved in it. So we're all kind of like, well, what do we do here? What can I contribute? And just trying to use our strengths to band together in Voltron style and make a really cool new IP,
I was like, not a Voltron reference. Yes. I think this origin story so clearly illustrates what's great about the idea of networking. It's just abusing all of your friends' talents to make something super, super cool. I would love to nail down a little bit on the story of Evermind, because at the heart of it is this complicated father-daughter relationship. And I want to know why that was so important to ground like some of the more sci-fi elements, like Sean was talking about, like robots and giant gorillas, and why that story with Lucas and Jen is so important.
Okay, well, there is plenty of crazy sci-fi action going on, and I think that's how I kind of saw the story before, was really fleshed out. And then when Carl said it's time to start drawing this, I just thought about how much work all that would be, and I was trying to find a way to get out of it. And that was mostly because the story wasn't developed yet. And I think what I found out that was really missing was like we never really talked about the human element, like the character story. And so once the characters were kind of formed and developed, all of a sudden there was like this momentum. The story just really took off, and it got way better. And I became all the way from like, not as interested in drawing this to all of a sudden being very interested, to the point where, we're talking about 6 issues here, and that can probably go on for 10 years because of the way that the characters are kind of formed together. So I was mostly inspired by, well, not inspired, but Steve Jobs and the relationship with his daughter. And because he had a daughter that was estranged to him. And there was, a lot of drama behind that. So I took that even one step further and made it so that, Lucas Zong is he's a scientist who's using his science to kind of benefit himself. And then, so to counterpoint that, I gave him a daughter that, like a lot of times younger kids or even girls are very idealistic. So she's part of an activist group that is sort of like a watchdog group that makes sure that science, because science is a family business, is used for the betterment of humanity, not for corporate greed or anything. So they end up being ideologically on completely opposite sides of the spectrum. And the story really is about that large gulf between them and whether they will ever get together and see eye to eye and kind of mend all that years of, it just seems like the gulf is so large that it can never really be crossed. But so this is a story about, Lucas Zong being a very flawed person. And then Jen is sort of like the mentor that kind of leads him or points him to the way that he needs to go to be a better person. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's what touched me about the project is, yeah, you've created this interesting world science and technology, and the idea of like, you know, can mind control technology, blah blah blah, and all that stuff. But the heart of the story is what you said, is a father-daughter story. And I think any good type of storytelling, you have that world building, but you have to have a heart that people can relate to, that's beyond the genre, right? And I think any kind of successful genre pieces do that. They go beyond the genre and hit something at its core. Last of Us being one of them, right? That relationship between, you know, him and the girl. That is the heart of the movie. It's not really about zombies and blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff, but that is the packaging that it sits in. And I think Evermind, what was so intense about it to me was that it was in that realm.
Okay, so we have Sean entering the world of writing for the first time, Daniel entering the world of comics for the first time. You did it in, as you both just described for us, this multi-layer story with all of this genre dressing, this incredibly human story at the heart of it. What has your collaboration been like? What's the day-to-day, like, emails? Are we looking at art together? I would just love to know how you came together on this.
I think we started with kind of weekly meetings and weekly Zoom sessions and like brainstorming different things, different aspects, like working on, like, what I can bring is from my, you know, years of working in the movie business and being an actor, is like character and character building. And that's very important, that each character has their motivation and has their own storyline, and that they're distinct individuals that different, you know, audience members can attach to, or different readers can attach to. You know, you don't have to love the protagonist. You can love the side characters as well, and they have to be three-dimensional individuals. So that those were aspects that I knew that I had that background in working on scripts and working on other projects we could do. And then, you know, from my time working on Into the Badlands as an executive producer, we did a bit of world building as well, right? And so, you know, what are the rules of the world? What are those things? So I would ask those questions to help kind of Sean create that stuff. I mean, Sean had a really good foundation already. It was just really picking on the details of forming the clay a little bit more detailed and more three-dimensional.
Yeah, I would also add to that, that working with Daniel, I think, I don't know if it's him or just actors in general, they're always seeking background on character. So they really get into character and what motivates them. And I think more so than writers, though. I mean, writers inherently should know that, but then it is an actor's job to know how to create a nuanced performance by knowing exactly all the events that led up to this, so they can kind of shape. And so a lot of times a writer will write emotions and scenes in broad strokes, but it's the actors that really get into the nitty gritty of it. And also with Daniel's personal story, like, this is a story about with this scientist who kind of prioritized his own desire for greatness over his own family, and he's estranged from his, you know, this implied that he's not with his wife, and then he's estranged from his daughter. So Daniel I think was faced with a very similar thing, where you had to make a choice whether you're going to like go full on in Hollywood, or you know, I think there was a pretty key moment in his family dynamics that he needed to be there and prioritize that. So he made that decision, and he can really inform the right path to take. So that's ultimately what this is about, is should you prioritize greatness at any cost, or should you put your family above your personal needs? And you know, as writers, we kind of imply how you should make the right decisions and how you should live your life. So I think Daniel can really inform a lot of this.
Yeah, I forgot about that. I mean, it's a very intense part of my life that I had to make some tough decisions in order to, you know, have a great conscience, you know. And so, yeah, I was very intensely intimate with that subject matter that we're talking about between Lucas Zhang and his daughter, and the decisions that he maybe made more poor decisions than I did personally. But because I had to review all that for many years in my mind, like, I was very familiar with all those kinds of aspects of that kind of decision making. And, you know, now I'm also a father of a 10-year-old daughter as well. And so all of these topics are coming up in my mind, like, how do you raise someone? How do you try to give them the same kind of things that you have, but without pushing it on them too much, you know, especially coming from an Asian family, right? Where my parents, you know, ruled by negative reinforcement and shame. And how do you take aspects of that and put it in there without being like that? but also in a more healthy way for a child. So all those kind of topics I've definitely been dealing with personally, I think it can inform the characters in the story, and we definitely were able to use some of that in the story.
So since we're getting into the nitty gritty, I have to ask, who named the dog Doggo?
Okay, that's just me trying to be, I have a daughter, I have kids too. They use that term a lot for dogs they don't know. It's also, I don't name characters. I kind of left that up to Carl. Mm-hmm. So a lot of these characters were named by Carl, and he actually cast them, and he also named the title of the book. So when it came to naming a dog, it was just very easy to call him Doggo.
It was my favorite little detail. And it's hard to talk about the issues that I read without spoiling, because the mythology is so rich and the story is so deep. But I've kept you both longer than I promised. But before I let you go, Evermind is on Kickstarter at the time people are seeing this right now. So can you just let people know how they can best support both of you, support this project, and all of that moving forward?
Well, we're on Twitter and Instagram on 24/7 Comics HQ. Mm-hmm. I'm on Instagram personally at that Daniel Wu. Mm-hmm. Any information about Evermind will be on all of those platforms. And the Kickstarter is really cool. We have many tiers that you can get involved in. I'm really excited about it because it's very different than filmmaking. You don't necessarily go out to the public and help start something. I mean, I know there's some films done that way, but I think it's an interesting way to get our fans and followers from different places all involved in this comic book. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, you can find me on Sean Chan Art on Instagram. If you could, please consider backing the Kickstarter and pick one of the tiers that fits you. So this is sort of like a big experiment, because I'm a guy that worked for Marvel and DC for a long time. And I had some projects lined up at Marvel that I put aside to do this because I have more creative freedom. So this is kind of a big grand experiment to see whether an artist can survive outside the corporate comic system, and kind of create something that it's fully created by us, and we bring it directly to you. And people know what to expect art-wise from me, but that would be wrong, because the art is leveled up, because this is my baby. So the art is a lot better than stuff in the past. And also with the writing, although I'm not a veteran writer, people who read this can kind of see the passion, and the passion is really palpable in the book, and you can kind of see like the energy in it. It's just like a party all the way through. And I think that, it would be great. I would love you to see it, and I'd love you to read it. So just really consider giving the Kickstarter a pledge.
Yeah, Sean hit a real important point there. Like I'm a kid of the 80s and 90s. I grew up with punk and hip hop and skateboarding and DIY culture. And so I'm a big proponent of independent creativity. That's where I grew up on. That's where I find the most interesting creativity that happens. So if you're a supporter of that, come to our Kickstarter and help support that ideology.
Also, viewers, I'm going to be a backer, so I expect you to be a backer as well. And you can leave a little comment and say that you decided to back because you saw our cool chat today. Daniel, Sean, thank you so much, one, for creating the story. I hope we'll get to talk more and maybe spoiler filled in the future. And thank you for coming and sharing Evermind with all of us today.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
And just one more reminder that as you are watching this right now, right this very second, you can go ahead and you can back Evermind, and you can see just how many robot ladies and gorillas there are. There's a lot. And I mean that truly and only in the best way possible. All right, friends, we are wrapping up another episode of Enter the Popverse. I have enjoyed having you with me this weekend. To all my fellow Canadians is Canadian Thanksgiving. So I will be traveling home. I hope I see so many of you out in the world, but I want to wish a happy Thanksgiving to anybody who might, like myself, be celebrating. Americans, it's coming up next for us, but I'm celebrating with my fellow Canadians this weekend. I have been your video producer and host, Ashley Victoria Robinson, as always, and I want to remind you that if you want more of this story, I always put links in the show notes below to everything we reference, but you can find this, so much more, deep dives, articles, features, photos, videos, all over at thepopverse.com, where we are celebrating the very best in TV, movies, and comics. It's because of the Popverse that we get to do Enter the Popverse together each and every single week. While you're over there, why not get yourself a Popverse membership? That way, from October 12th to 15th, while me and everybody else from Team Popverse is in New York City trying to hold our sanity together with coffee and donuts, you can do incredible things like check out the Ewan McGregor main stage panel that I am hosting and some of the other amazing things that so many talented people have spent so long putting together just for you. If you're on the East Coast of the United States, snap up the few remaining tickets because we do want to see you there, of course. My friends, we've come to the end. It's so tragic, but while you're here, why not do what that nice little banner at the bottom is saying, and why not like, subscribe, and click that bell? That way you never miss a single episode of Enter the Popverse, especially when we're live, and especially when you can join us chatting to all of our incredible guests. This gives you the most access to all things Enter the Popverse possible, because I love being here with you, and I know you love being here with me. Alrighty, my friends, thank you so much for joining, and I will see you next time.